What was your most serious thank I double-checked moment? Answering exams and finished early. Double-checked when the teacher reminded us that there was only 5 minutes left and saw that I hadn't answered the whole backside of a page. Luckily it was multiple choice, though. Student pilot 8 years ago. Got fuel in a high-wing training airplane. Instructor is ready to go. I had done the pre-flight before the fuel truck arrived. You can't see the fuel caps from the ground. I was about to start the engine but got out, hopped up on the step, and found both caps loose. I think this applies. So summer 2010, my family is having the inside of the house painted. Hot as, so my parents leave the upstairs window open day and night to let out the paint smell out and help it dry with the hot air. I really don't like this. I'm a naturally paranoid person. This went on for several weeks. We have a pretty big house. One day before I leave to school, I decided to go upstairs and shut the window and lock it. They can yell at me later if they want. When I came home that afternoon, the painter told me, hey, that big ladder you have on the side of the house was getting in the way, so I moved it. Hope that's okay. I responded, we don't have a biggest ladder. Apparently someone came up to the house and set up a ladder to get through the open window, but I'd closed it just by chance that day. I guess when they saw our painter coming they ditched it and split, song ladder. Oddly enough, my parents kept opening the window at night and during the day after all that. Edit, yes. We came up on a free ladder. But I'm scared of heights, grimacing face. Almost submitted a test paper without my name on it. Was paying my mortgage online and almost added an extra digit to my payment amount. That would have sucked so bad because it could have wiped my checking account out. Almost forgot my room keys before a 6-hour drive back to my university. I was at a 4-way intersection at night when my light turned green. I was the only car on the road and in a hurry, but something in me felt like I needed to look left before I went. Right after I turned my head to look, a car without any headlights on ran the red light going probably 50 miles per hour. Had I just immediately gone instead of glancing left, I would have been T-boned and probably killed. Listen to your gut, people. I joined a writing competition hosted by a uni once where you weren't allowed to write your name, but your paper would be identified by a number code, so the corrector wouldn't be biased, and almost submitted it with my name instead of my code. Ended up getting 3rd place and a 10% scholarship to one of the unis where I live. I almost killed my niece's cat by a washing machine. I was staying with my brother and his family for a bit when I first moved into the city. One day I threw a bunch of clothes in the machine, went back to my room to get a sweater, threw that into the machine on top of the curious feline that had jumped in while I was out of the room. Poured in detergent, and just about closed the lid when I decided to double-check the pocket of my sweater. As soon as I moved it, out jumped the cat. Never told anyone, but I made a point of checking from then on. Looking through papers to shred. I opened an envelope and inside was a $2,500 check. It was a week from expiring and according to the paperwork, it was a refund from when we refinanced our mortgage. I once worked at a school where I had to look after the kids who stayed until their parents picked them up. Don't know what it's called in English. After school care. They usually had the classic little game where they would hide and I pretended not to know where they were and told the parents that I hadn't seen them all day. Problem is that they would do this with 2 or 3 at a time and then come out all together. Usually. One time this kid started hiding with some others at around 6 p.m. but didn't come out at all, so he kept hiding away until 7 p.m. at the end of my shift. Thank that during my closing routine I found him in some ridiculous tiny little space because I totally forgot about him. I had about 40 to 50 parents coming in between 6 and 7. When his mother came to pick him up way later than expected, I acted all jolly, but I seriously would have closed off since I really thought all the children left. Not a proud moment. Don't know if this counts, but had a feeling something is off about my wife's behavior. Checked her phone, never did before and felt weird, found out she cheated on me. led to a cascade of discovery LS, as in she was in a relationship with the guy and GKT pregnant from him, had her abortion while visiting her family. Getting divorced now. Please don't take this as you should not trust your partner, but be aware of changes in behavior. I was driving a reach truck, working overnight at Home Depot. Another guy had crawled in to move a box. Dunno what he was thinking. And I never double checked, because why would I? Always did after that. If I hadn't, he'd be dead. Short term, printing everything off for a London-Edinburgh trip last year and realized when double checking our train tickets from London to Edinburgh were the wrong day. We still had one more day in London. Nothing could be done until we got to London, but if we hadn't noticed before getting to the train station the day out, it would have been costly. Long term, this stretch is double checked but still important. I tried to give blood a few times while I was in the Navy, but my iron was always too low, no matter what I ate recently. Decided to check it out. Tests done. Anemic. Doc asks if I want to just treat that or go further. Of course, go further and find out why I'm anemic. 18 months and zillions of tests later, Crohn's disease. Since caught while I was in the service, I got a medical retirement discharge, some cash, a monthly stipend, and full health care. If I had just got the anemia treated, would have got out while sick deeper in and probably be a world of pain right now. Citations on an English paper. Every time. I've always made it a habit to double check to make sure the organ blower is turned off after a service, lesson, or practice session. The organ blower is 3-phase, many horsepower, and requires a lot of juice to run it. If it were left on overnight, the blower could overheat and cause a fire. Late one day after teaching, I double-checked to be certain a student had turned the blower off after his hours of practice. Sure enough, it was still turned on and the blower was red hot. If I hadn't looked, there could have been a fire in the building that night. So I was feeling and hearing this thumping in my own head. It just would not stop, going on a few weeks. It was set to right around 60 thumps a minute. Extremely annoying, like something was hitting the inside of my head lightly. I finally decide to go to the clinic and they tell me it is just an ear infection. I take the medicine and follow the orders, but it doesn't get better. A couple days later, it was still going on and my breathing felt like it was getting worse / my chest was hurting. So I made an appointment with my normal doctor. He thought my body just tricked me into hyperventilating, but as he was leaving and saying goodbye, he decided to have me go get blood work. Turns out my blood levels were almost non-existent. The paramedic that I ended up having to ride with told me that he had never seen someone with such low blood levels still conscious and coherent. Wake up late at night feeling thirsty. Everything is dark. I always keep a glass of water by the bed. I grope for the glass and grab it and am about to take a swig when I suddenly think no, better check. So I put it down and stumble groggily over to the light and switch. There's a huge cockroach floating dead in the glass. One time I was putting my hair straightener away and I dropped it into the toilet. As soon as it hit the water, it started hissing and sizzling and I assumed it was because it was still hot. For a second I went to reach over and yank it out, but then I was like, it's still plugged in. It never tripped the safety switch that bathroom outlets usually have because this house was old and didn't have bathroom outlets. I had to run a cheap extension cord from the office to the bathroom to do my hair. Literally almost grabbed a live electrical appliance that was shorting out in water. Every time I'm driving and I'm turning into a different lane, I always check over my shoulder. I check all of my mirrors, then look over my shoulder. Do you know how many times it looks clear to merge into a different lane based off of the mirrors? But when I finally look over my shoulder I see someone is right next to me. Especially motorcycles. I was cleaning my room and throwing out a bunch of school papers, old envelopes, etc. I'm always nervous throwing out garbage bags in apartments. I guess the garbage chute seems more permanent than a bin that's collected weekly. Because there were so many papers and I was moving, I decided to double check the bag. I had an envelope of over $1,300 in savings bonds and tips I had hidden in my drawer earlier in the year. I felt like I made $1,300 that day. I had a job a while ago as a secretary in the Pentagon. My boss got a PDF every morning with a summary of military news, and it was my job to download it every morning and email it out every day to the boss and the whole unit. I was also reading Game of Thrones at the time. A pirated PDF copy. I had a copy on my work computer. One day, somehow my book got renamed on accident, and I attached it to the day's news email. Right before hitting send, I decided to make sure I was sending out today's news, not the day before's. So I open the attachment and check. It loads, and I'm greeted by the cover of Game of Thrones. I had the default reaction. I had copied a link to send to my BF, ended up not sending it, and later was emailing my students to update them about something or other. Accidentally pasted the link into the email and almost sent 20 college students a link to Pornhub.